Senator Jim Carlson will be representing Eagan and parts of Burnsville again. He won re-election to his fourth term in the Minnesota legislature and joins us now to talk about what's next. Welcome and congratulations, Senator Carlson.
Oh, thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be able to have your supporters and constituents support you again and get you back into the Senate. This is going on to my fifth term now, and it feels better and better, but the learning curve is still very, very steep.
There's a lot of challenges this coming year. I mean, we are in the middle of a pandemic that is logistically a problem just for meeting, but it also is a issue just for trying to get legislation passed. You're going to be a minority member of the Senate this time around. So what can you do to rise to the challenges of dealing with COVID-19 in this situation?
Well, I think the majority and the minority are thinking a lot about the same things. One of the biggest issues we've had is this, the sense of denial. And I think that comes from the top. It comes from national. And I believe that people are starting to really recognize that it's real, it's dangerous, and it is going to get you if you don't pay attention. We've had some conversions, I guess I could say, some of them legitimate, some of them maybe just for convenience in the last few days, where some of the members of the legislature are now saying, this is really serious. This is really important. And I'll name the person that has really started it off, and that's former Representative Nick Zerwas, who was on NPR with the governor and also appeared in one of his addresses to the public. Representative Zerwas did contract it, and he was in the hospital. And if anyone knows of him, he has had severe heart problems his entire life. And so this was a threat to actually be very close to death for him. So he is now converted to the other side, that he is saying this is really critical. I do have to say that in context, it was only a little over a month ago that he was denying that it was real, and he was bar hopping with Representative Tom Emmer. So it's very encouraging that someone like that can now come out and warn his side of the aisle that this is serious and it's something that we really have to address. And adding to that, today on the news was a brief address by Representative Garofalo, who said we have to put aside all the things that we disagree on and agree that this is a serious issue that we have to address. It was only a day ago that he also put out a tweet that said, let's put everything else aside and let's work on the budget. Well, you can't do that in January because you work on the budget after the February forecast comes out. But now he is saying that the COVID is the most important thing that we have to deal with. There are many people dying every day, and I am encouraged to see that the Garofalo-Zerwas side of the aisle is now recognizing that this is a very serious, deadly war that we're fighting, and it is a war.
So assuming that you now have some buy-in from the majority party, what are you hoping to accomplish in pushing back against COVID-19? I mean, obviously we're waiting for a vaccine. We have a lot of financial damage that has been done to businesses from all of the restrictions that we've had to put to prevent COVID-19 from spreading. What type of legislation would you like to see go forward here?
Personally, I mean, I've been pretty open about what I'd like to see, and that is that we have the only way that we can bring a little bit of economy back to Minnesota is by sponsoring a bonding bill. With the lowest interest rates we've ever had in this country, we have the highest unemployment that we've had for years and years, and these are people who have specific skills in construction, and we could marry that together, get a bonding bill going, distribute funds, and you have to remember that every dime of a bonding bill goes to private industry. It doesn't go to increasing government or anything like that. It goes to private industry. It goes to build the infrastructure around the entire state of Minnesota, which means that the jobs are created in the entire state of Minnesota. And most of them are fairly highly paid construction jobs run by construction companies. And this is the kind of thing that immediately puts income taxes back into the system. It puts sales taxes back into the system. And so what happens, and we're doing some initial calculations that right off the bat, the money that comes back into the general fund can pay the debt service of the first year of any bonding bill, no matter how large it is. So this is something that we should be taking seriously, that we can't borrow for operations, but we can borrow for infrastructure. And you know what? After the whole job is done, we still have the infrastructure. And I think that should be something that's really high on our priorities right now, is we will not be able to tax our way out of this. There is no one making the kind of money that can pay these kinds of taxes now. So it's going to be something where we have to increase our revenue flow. And the only thing we can do to do that is actually, let's say, build business, which is, some ways is not possible right now. We can't just open up all the movie theaters and the bars and restaurants, because what that's going to do is overwhelm our healthcare system. So the building of infrastructure is probably our best option right now.
Well, let's talk about some of the other issues you want to tackle in 2021. Everything's framed, of course, by COVID-19, but when you were here last, you said you plan to work on a voting access bill. What changes do you want to make?
Oh, there's a lot of things that we really need to make easier. And of course, I think we have about only 80% of the country now that realizes that mail-in voting is not fraught with fraud. They're not finding any fraud in the absentee voting. And actually, the mail-in voting has already been in place in Minnesota for 1,000 precincts and all of the overseas military as well as expats that are around the world. That's mail-in voting, and it's not full of fraud at all. And so I'd like to expand that a bit. In Dakota County, we actually have had a bill to try to increase the ability for these smaller municipalities to be able to switch to mail-in voting. In the state of Minnesota, we have mail-in voting in any precinct that has less than 400 voters. But it can't be done in the 7-county metro area just because the law says no. And we've been asked to change that law to both allow it in the municipal counties in especially Dakota County, because we have some really small municipalities that would really love to have mail-in voting, but also increase that or increase that minimum to be 1,000 voters in a precinct. So that would probably enable maybe another 2,000 precincts out of the roughly 4,400 precincts that we have to be able to do mail-in voting.
I also saw, I was going to move on here just to some of the other issues, which was you had on your list of priorities a phone anti-scam bill, and I know that so many people, particularly seniors, are victims of scams that can really drain a family's bank account. What can be done here?
Well, now, one of our lobbyists in the phone industry is a constituent, and we've been talking quite a bit about it, and I've actually started to threaten him that I think the phone company, and they are working on it now, if you have a cell phone that has a certain couple of carriers have already put in a system where the number is validated before it comes to your cell phone, and you see a notation that instead of giving the number that's calling or the name of the person that might be in your address book, it says spam risk. It might even say political call. There's a few of those. We have AT&T as our carrier, and they're doing a good job of validating the number ahead of time when it's on some list that they have. It is not validated when it is one of these people that are trying to sell me longer warranties on my automobiles. So that happens probably 3 times a day. Right now, we do have let's say the profilers that are trying to find out whether you have a certain brand of insurance that can be added onto your Medicare. And because I'm of that age that is qualified for Medicare, I get lots and lots of those. And they're always robocalls too. They get around it by saying press 1, and that gets you to a live person, because Minnesota does have a law against robocalls. So what I would like to see us do is, number one, try to get the phone companies, if they want to do business in Minnesota, that they validate the number before it comes to my phone, especially if it says that this phone call is coming from Jim Carlson, because I get those as well. Second one is that if we suspect or if we find that it's an invalid number, a number that's from a different area code, all those words that you get if you try to call the number back, that you can press a couple of numbers like we used to do with star 57, star 72, all of those, and it will charge the phone company because they let it get through. So it used to be that you would put star 57 and it would send that number that you didn't like to someone, and we've never found out who that is, and it would charge you $1. I'd like it to be reversed, that if I have to run across the household here and pick up a phone call from somebody who is not even in this country and is trying to sell me an additional warranty on my cars, all of which have over 100,000 miles on them, I would like to be able to charge that person for making me run across the room, tripping on my coffee cup and all of that sort of thing. They should pay for that access to me. And so I'm kind of pushing that. There was a bill that was prompted in the House, and I wanted to take the Senate authorship of it. I don't remember the bill number right now, but the senator that was going to sponsor it is Matt Little. Matt Little is not going to be in the Senate for the next 2 years. So I'm going to try to take that bill over and get something done with that.
Okay.
And actually, that's something that should get some real good bipartisan support, especially from people that are that maybe have elderly in their family or they're elderly themselves.
I don't know if anybody who's told me, gee, I really like getting those spam phone calls because I don't get to talk to a lot of people during the day. I got one other issue I just want to touch on base with you here before we go, which is gun safety. There's been a lot of talk about the need for that, including background checks for gun sales, yet nothing has been passed here in terms of legislation. What's likely to happen with this in 2021?
Well, it's something that you have to do a lot of education on, and I think we're getting there. In the State Fair poll for the Senate and the House, they have had those questions in there, and they've always come up with about 80 to 90% support for universal background checks. That's for every gun sale that they have to do a background check. And by the way, licensed firearms dealers are already required to do that. And so what this would do is it would spread to any other kind of sale to just make sure that the right kind of person, let's say the right qualified person, is eligible to buy that firearm. The other one is what we call the extreme risk or red flag law. And what that is that if there's a woman who is afraid of her husband and he has firearms and he's not very stable, that she can go to law enforcement. They will investigate it. She will fill out an application. The officer or the police chief or the municipality that's helping her do it will sign off on it. It will be presented to the judge, just like an order for protection. And then the judge will determine and write out a warrant that this person has to turn in their guns immediately, or they can notify that person and they have to come in within 14 days to have a hearing as to whether they can continue to possess those firearms. Now, that's something that is a little bit dear to me in my neighborhood here, because my camera is pointed right now at the wall, but if it were turned just a slight bit, it would show a house that's across the street and a couple of doors up. And the young woman that grew up in that house lived in Ramsey, Minnesota. Her name was Courtney Munson. That's her married name. And this exact same situation happened to her, where her husband was unstable. He owned firearms. The family tried to get his firearms taken away, and they couldn't do anything. And he came home that same week that that Prince lost his life. He came home, chased his wife around the house, down into the basement, shot and killed her in front of their kids, and then shot and killed himself. Now, there is no reason that you shouldn't be able to investigate something like that ahead of time. And I can tell you that this person was also, there was an order for protection and an order to have him committed because he was unsafe. And he didn't quite reach the criteria for committing him. This was committing him against his will in a place like St. Peter. And they couldn't quite get it. And that's all in the record. But they also couldn't take away his firearms. With the extreme risk bill, you would be able to do that. And the states that have passed these now have at least double-digit incidents of all of those states being able to do that. And it's primarily a protection of women and families where someone is not, let's say, should not be eligible to have firearms. There are also young people that have this problem as well. And I would say that Rittenhouse that came up from Illinois and went into Wisconsin and shot those two guys with a long gun, that there is history there that person also should have been investigated for eligibility. Now, this is, again, there is a due process. It goes through a court. The judge writes the warrant. So it is not something that a jilted girlfriend could do to you. It requires, and by the way, when you do that application, you sign it as it's as an affidavit. So it does have the force of perjury if you lie about it. So that's something that I think we're getting there, where people are starting to realize that this is not threatening to legitimate gun owners. It's not threatening to people who want to hunt. It's not threatening to people who follow the law.
So I hear you say you're hopeful that something will get done on this maybe in 2021.
I'm hoping, yes. And the big limitation is Warren Limmer, who is the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and he is getting extreme pressure right now. And if anybody wants to look at some of the backstory, it's in the paper today that the title of the article is a little bit incorrect. It says that the gun safety people, and they use a different term, which I don't like to use because it's not gun control, it's gun safety, that they didn't get much done this year in the election. And that's not true. Warren Limmer lost by the smallest majority that he's had in many years. And it's got to be threatening to him. And he won't even hear the bill. So it's not a matter of bringing it to the floor. He won't hear the bill because there's a lot of people, I think, that would vote for it. And there are groups that don't want him to actually hear the bill. Right. And there was another person that was beaten by one of the targeted, or he was one of the targeted people from this the gun safety people, and that's Dan Hall in our next group here.
Well, Senator Carlson, again, congratulations on your reelection, and thank you so much for taking time today to talk to us about the issues, about what's coming up next year at the Minnesota Legislature and with you.
Anytime, and I'm hoping that people write and get your questions in and talk to me, talk to my assistant, and send me notes, jimc@senate.mn.
All right, thank you.